Everyone laughed when the billionaire dumped food on him, but they stopped laughing when he did this. He was just a black worker doing his job, no camera, no protection, and she humiliated him for entertainment. But instead of shouting, instead of fighting, he did something that made the room go silent. Because the billionaire didn't realize one thing: the man she humiliated wasn't powerless at all. Before you go, we'd love to know, which country are you watching from? Drop your country's name in the comments and let's see how far this story has reached. And if this story made you feel something, if it reminded you that respect matters no matter who you are, please consider subscribing to the channel. The ballroom shimmered like a palace built for ego. Crystal chandeliers spilled white light over marble floors, reflecting off champagne flutes and diamond-studded wrists. Silk gowns brushed past tailored tuxedos. Every laugh was rehearsed, every smile practiced. This wasn't just a charity gala, it was a performance of wealth, a place where power dressed itself beautifully and called it generosity. At the center of it all stood Vivian Hawthorne, billionaire, socialite, media darling. She wore a crimson designer gown that hugged her perfectly, the kind of dress magazines wrote entire spreads about. A glass of imported champagne rested loosely in her fingers as she laughed, loud, effortless, confident that every sound she made mattered. Around her, a small circle of elites leaned in, hanging onto her words like they were currency. "Honestly," Vivian said, rolling her eyes dramatically, "if you're going to host an event this expensive, the staff should at least learn how not to ruin the atmosphere." A ripple of chuckles followed. Near the edge of the group stood a black man in a simple black uniform. No name tag, no spotlight, just another worker blending into the background as he balanced a silver tray of hors d'oeuvres. His posture was straight, his movements precise. He walked carefully, eyes lowered, doing exactly what he was hired to do: serve, stay invisible. As he stepped forward to offer the tray, someone bumped his shoulder from behind. The tray tilted, just slightly. A few pieces of food slid, one brushing dangerously close to Vivian's dress. The room froze. Vivian gasped theatrically, stepping back as if she'd nearly been attacked. "Oh my God!" she said loudly. "Are you serious?" The worker immediately steadied the tray. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said quietly, calm, respectful. But apology wasn't enough. Vivian stared at him, eyes scanning him the way one inspects a stain. Then she laughed, not a nervous laugh, not an awkward one, a cruel laugh. "You people are always so clumsy," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "Do you know how much this dress costs?" A few people shifted uncomfortably. Most didn't. Vivian leaned closer, her smile widening, as she picked up a small plate from the tray. She examined it for a second, then tilted it, slowly, dumping the food straight onto the floor at his feet. The sound was soft, wet, final. Gasps echoed, followed almost instantly by laughter. Someone snorted, someone clapped, phones subtly tilted upward. "There," said Vivian sweetly. "Now you don't have to worry about dropping it." The laughter grew louder. The worker didn't move. Food lay splattered near his polished shoes, crumbs against the marble like something discarded and forgotten. For a moment it seemed as if he might bend down, apologize again, maybe even clean it up. Instead, he stood still. Vivian cocked her head. "Well," she said, "are you just going to stand there?" Silence crept in, thin, uncomfortable. He finally spoke. "Is there anything else you need, ma'am?" His voice was steady, no tremble, no anger. That, somehow, made it worse. Vivian laughed again, this time louder, feeding off the crowd's reaction. "Look at him," she said, gesturing as if he weren't standing right there. "So serious. Relax, it's just food." More laughter, louder, crueler. But something felt wrong. A man near the bar stopped smiling. A woman lowered her glass. Even the musicians paused, their soft background music faltering. The worker slowly lowered the tray to a nearby table. With deliberate care, he straightened his sleeves, still calm, still composed. Then he did something no one expected. He lifted his head. For the first time, his eyes met the room, not pleading, not furious, but observant, sharp, a quiet depth that didn't match the uniform he wore. And then his gaze shifted, past Vivian, past the laughing guests, across the ballroom. He locked eyes with a man standing near the far entrance, a man in a dark suit, flanked subtly by security, his posture unmistakably authoritative. The man's expression changed instantly. Not confusion, recognition. The worker held his gaze for just a second longer than necessary. No smile, no nod, just a look that said, "You see this too." The laughter around Vivian continued, but now it sounded hollow, because somewhere in the room, something had just shifted. The laughter didn't stop immediately. It lingered, thin, sharp, uncomfortable, like a joke that had gone on too long but no one dared to end. Vivian Hawthorne basked in it, lifting her champagne glass as if she had just delivered a punchline worthy of applause. But the worker still hadn't moved. Most people would have rushed away by now. Most would have lowered their heads, mumbled another apology, anything to escape the heat of public humiliation. That was the unspoken rule of rooms like this. Know your place, then disappear. He didn't. He stood with his hands calmly folded in front of him, eyes forward, breathing steady. The contrast was unsettling. His silence wasn't empty, it was deliberate. Vivian noticed. She narrowed her eyes, irritation flickering beneath her polished smile. "Why are you still here?" she asked, her tone dripping with false amusement. "I didn't invite you to stand around and brood." A few guests laughed again, though this time it sounded forced. One man glanced toward the exit. Another checked his phone, pretending not to notice the tension thickening the air. The worker finally turned slightly toward Vivian. His voice, when he spoke, was low but clear. "I was assigned to this section for the evening." Assigned, not begging, not defensive. Vivian scoffed. "Assigned," she repeated. "You're assigned to serve, and right now you're ruining the mood." She leaned closer, lowering her voice just enough to feel intimate, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Do you even understand where you are?" The question hung there, sharp and loaded. The worker met her eyes briefly, then looked away, as if deciding something internally. "Yes," he said, simply, "I do." That single sentence sent a strange ripple through the group. There was no challenge in it, no sarcasm, just certainty. Vivian straightened, clearly annoyed. "Funny," she said, "you don't act like it." She turned to the crowd. "Honestly, this is why I hate these events. You try to do something charitable, and suddenly you're babysitting people who don't belong." A few people nodded, others didn't. Near the bar, a middle-aged man with silver hair shifted uncomfortably. "Vivian," he said cautiously, "maybe that's enough." She cut him off with a wave of her hand. "Oh, don't start. I'm not being cruel. I'm being honest." Her gaze snapped back to the worker. "Clean it up," she said, gesturing to the food on the floor. "Then leave." For the first time, the worker hesitated, not out of fear, but deliberation. He glanced down at the mess, then back up at Vivian. "I'll have someone take care of it," he replied. The room went still. "I didn't ask for someone," Vivian snapped. "I asked you." A beat passed. Then he said something that didn't sound like defiance, but wasn't obedience either. "That won't be necessary." A sharp intake of breath echoed from somewhere behind them. Vivian laughed again, but this time there was no humor in it. "Excuse me?" He turned fully toward her now, still calm, still composed. "I've already reported the incident." Her smile faltered, just slightly.
Reported, she repeated. To who? Your supervisor? No, to the appropriate party. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Someone murmured, "What does that mean?" Another guest leaned closer, curiosity replacing amusement. Vivian recovered quickly, rolling her eyes. "Oh, please, do you think making threats is going to scare me? I'm not threatening you, I'm informing you." The man near the entrance, the one the worker had locked eyes with earlier, shifted his stance. His hand moved subtly, pressing a finger against the small device in his ear. Security took a step closer. Vivian didn't notice. She was too busy reclaiming control. "This is ridiculous," she said loudly. "Get him out of here." Before security could move, the worker spoke one final sentence, quiet, precise, impossible to ignore. "You may want to check who approved this venue tonight." The words landed like a dropped glass. Across the room, the man by the entrance stiffened, and for the first time that night, Vivian Hawthorne felt something unfamiliar crawl up her spine. Uncertainty.
For a moment, no one moved. The music had stopped completely now. The soft clink of glasses and distant murmurs from other parts of the ballroom faded, leaving a pocket of silence around Vivian and the worker, thick, pressing, impossible to ignore. Vivian blinked, then laughed sharply. "Approved the venue?" she echoed. "This is the Hawthorne Foundation Gala. I don't need permission from anyone." Her voice was louder than before, too loud, the kind of volume people use to convince themselves they're still in control. A few guests nodded reflexively, but their eyes betrayed them. They weren't watching Vivian anymore. They were watching him. The worker stood with his shoulders relaxed, hands loosely at his sides. He hadn't raised his voice, he hadn't stepped closer, yet somehow the space around him felt heavier, as if the room itself had leaned in to listen. "I'm sure you believe that," he said calmly. That word, believe, hit Vivian wrong. She opened her mouth to snap back, but one of her friends leaned toward her, whispering urgently, "Viv, maybe let it go. This is getting weird." Vivian shot her a glare. "Weird?" she hissed. "He's bluffing." But the confidence didn't quite reach her eyes. Across the ballroom, the man near the entrance had fully turned toward them now. He wasn't smiling. His jaw was tight, his gaze fixed on the worker with unmistakable focus. The two security guards flanking him straightened, scanning the room instead of chatting casually as they had been moments earlier. A ripple passed through the crowd as people noticed the shift. "Who's that guy?" someone murmured. "Isn't that?" Another voice started, then stopped. Vivian felt it too, the subtle change in energy, the way attention was slipping through her fingers. She took a step closer to the worker, lowering her voice again, venomous and controlled. "You think you're clever. You think dropping cryptic little lines makes you important." She leaned in, close enough that only he could hear her next words. "Your staff. You always will be." He didn't flinch. Instead, he glanced past her shoulder, again, toward the entrance. Vivian followed his gaze without meaning to. That's when she saw the man walking toward them. The crowd parted instinctively, as if guided by an unspoken rule. Conversations died mid-sentence, phones lowered, faces tightened with recognition. "Wait," someone whispered. "That's Marcus Bell." The name spread like electricity. Marcus Bell, the city's most powerful real estate authority, a man whose signature decided which buildings lived and which were demolished, whose approval determined which events happened and which never did. Vivian's smile stiffened. Marcus stopped a few feet away from them. He didn't look at Vivian at first. His attention was fixed on the worker. "Sir," Marcus said, his voice respectful, "I didn't realize you were present tonight." The word "sir" landed hard. A hush fell so complete it felt unnatural. Vivian's breath caught. "Marcus," she said quickly, forcing a laugh, "there's been a misunderstanding. This employee has been disruptive." Marcus finally looked at her, and the look wasn't friendly. "Is that so?" he asked coolly. The worker turned to face Marcus. "It's fine," he said. "I just wanted to observe." Observe. Vivian felt the room tilt. Marcus nodded once, then turned back to her. "Miss Hawthorne," he said carefully,
Do you know who approves the operational permits for this venue? Vivian swallowed. Of course, she said. The city. The city, Marcus interrupted, acts on recommendations. Recommendations I signed this morning. A murmur swept through the guests. Vivian's fingers tightened around her champagne glass. And, she snapped. Marcus gestured subtly toward the worker. And I signed them after consulting with him. The silence shattered into whispers. Vivian stared at the worker, really stared at him now, as if seeing him for the first time. The uniform, the calm, the eyes that had never once begged. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She looked down. 3 missed calls. 1 voicemail. From her legal team. Her smile finally cracked. Vivian Hawthorne stared at her phone as if it had betrayed her. Her fingers trembled slightly as she unlocked the screen. The room felt suddenly smaller, the air heavier. Around her, the whispers grew louder, no longer amused, no longer cruel, but sharp with curiosity, and something dangerously close to anticipation. Marcus Bell watched her closely. "You should listen to that voicemail," he said calmly. Vivian forced a laugh. "This is absurd," she said, though the confidence had drained from her voice. "You're all acting like this employee?" The worker stepped forward for the first time that night. Not aggressively, not hurried, just 1 step. The movement alone silenced the room. "You don't have to explain yourself," he said evenly. "Your actions already did." Vivian's jaw tightened. "Who do you think you are?" she demanded, "walking into my event dressed like that and undermining me in front of everyone?" The worker met her gaze, unblinking. "I didn't undermine you," he replied. "I let you speak." A few guests exchanged glances. Someone exhaled a quiet, shocked laugh. Marcus cleared his throat. "Ms. Hawthorne," he said, "allow me to introduce Mr. Elijah Grant." The name didn't hit immediately. Then it did. A woman near the front gasped softly. "Elijah Grant," she whispered. "As in Grant Urban Development?" Phones came up again, this time openly. Vivian's face drained of color. "That's not possible," she said. "Elijah Grant doesn't wear uniforms?" Elijah finished for her. "Attend galas?" He gave a faint smile, not mocking, not cruel. "You're right. I usually don't." Marcus continued, his tone measured but unmistakably firm. "Mr. Grant oversees the redevelopment contracts for 3 major districts in this city, including the one your foundation relies on for its flagship housing project." The murmurs turned into a low roar. Vivian felt her pulse in her ears. "This is a setup," she said weakly. "You planned this." Elijah shook his head. "I planned to attend quietly," he said, "to see how your organization treats people when the cameras aren't aimed at you." He gestured toward the floor where the food still lay, untouched. "I didn't plan for that." The weight of his words pressed down on her. Around them, faces that had laughed minutes earlier now looked away, some with embarrassment, others with fear, a few with something like shame. Elijah turned slightly, addressing the room instead of her. "Power," he said, "has a way of revealing itself, not in speeches, not in donations, but in moments like this, when you think no one who matters is watching." He looked back at Vivian. "But someone always is." Vivian's phone buzzed again. This time she answered it, her voice tight. "Yes?" Her expression shifted with every word she heard. Confusion, panic, disbelief. She lowered the phone slowly. "My board," she said hoarsely, more to herself than anyone else. They're asking questions." Marcus nodded. "They should be." Elijah took another step forward, stopping just short of her personal space. "I'm not here to humiliate you," he said quietly. "You manage that on your own." The sting of those words drew a sharp breath from her chest. "I'm here to make a decision about whether your foundation deserves to keep operating in spaces meant to serve vulnerable communities." Vivian's shoulders sagged. The crowd watched in rapt silence as the reality settled in. This wasn't a scandal. It was an audit, and she was standing in the middle of it, exposed. No one laughed anymore. The ballroom that had once shimmered with careless confidence now felt stripped bare, as if the chandeliers had begun to expose instead of illuminate. Conversations had stopped entirely. Even the clinking of glasses felt inappropriate, too loud for the moment unfolding at the center of the room. Vivian Hawthorne stood frozen. Her shoulders, once squared with arrogance, sagged under the weight of a truth she could no longer outrun. The people who had surrounded her minutes ago, laughing, applauding, feeding off her cruelty, had taken subtle steps back. Power had shifted, and instinctively they were distancing themselves from the losing side. Elijah Grant looked at her, not with triumph, but with clarity. "This doesn't end tonight," he said calmly. "What you did will be reviewed, documented, and remembered." Vivian swallowed hard. "You're going to destroy everything I've built," she whispered. Elijah shook his head. "No," he replied. "I'm going to reveal it." The distinction mattered. He turned toward Marcus Bell. "Suspend the permits," he said, "effective immediately. I want a full review of the Foundation's labor practices, internal conduct, and public reporting." Marcus nodded. "It's already in motion." A quiet murmur rolled through the crowd. Not excitement this time, but reckoning. Vivian tried to speak again, but no words came. For the first time in her life, money couldn't buy silence. Influence couldn't rewrite the moment. The humiliation she had treated as entertainment had returned to her, slow, measured, undeniable. Elijah glanced once more at the food on the floor. He bent down, picked up the fallen plate himself, and handed it to a nearby staff member. "Please," he said politely, "take care of this." The simple act landed harder than any insult could have. He turned to leave, but paused at the edge of the room. "One more thing," he said, addressing everyone. The crowd leaned in. "Dignity doesn't come with a title," Elijah said, "and respect isn't something you donate, it's something you practice when you think no one important is watching." With that, he walked out. No applause followed, none was needed. Vivian remained standing alone, her reflection caught in the polished marble floor beneath her. For the first time, she looked exactly how she had treated others, small, exposed, and painfully aware. The gala ended early. But the story didn't. By morning, clips from the event flooded social media. Headlines replaced her smile with still frames of shock. Sponsors paused, boards convened. Silence became consequence. And somewhere far from the chandeliers and champagne, a quiet reminder lingered. Power reveals character. Cruelty always leaves evidence. And respect costs nothing, but its absence costs everything. If you witnessed this moment unfold, what would you have done? Would you have spoken up? Would you have laughed along? Or would you have stayed silent? Comment below and tell us, when power humiliates the powerless, whose responsibility is it to stop it? Your voice matters.